Hello and welcome. This is ETV English Special Program, a program where we mention pertinent issues of concern. In this edition of Special English, we're going to have exclusive interview. CEO of Gudina Tumsa founder, who is, of course, have been tremendously changing the lives of lots of people through his legacy, and some of the very interesting charity works will be addressed to you. And then I'm your host, Gudina. Do stay tuned. Lensa, Gudina, a very well welcome to ETV English Special Program.
Thank you for having me.
Before we go to the crux of the matter, I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll be involved into the nub of the stories we have.
I'm Lensa Gudina. Right now I'm working in GTF. I've been working in GTF for the past 30 years. And I'm the youngest daughter of Reverend Gudina Tumsa, who passed away 44 years ago now, in 1979.
Who was Gudina Tumsa? Can you briefly tell us his life stories and some of the success that he has been carrying out?
He was the General Secretary of the Ethiopian Evangelical Mekane Yesus Church. That's where he served. And he was, as I said earlier, he was killed in 1979 by the military government of Ethiopia. He was known for his theological thinking. He's a man who was on the way of developing African theology. His way of viewing the gospel was a unique one. He believed in holistic approach. Serving people, addressing their physical and spiritual needs together. And he was known for that at his time. And he was also known for bringing together all churches in Ethiopia, the evangelical churches and also the Orthodox Church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church. And forming the cooperation of churches in Ethiopia, because at the time the military government followed socialist ideology, where they said that there was no God. So in order to stand against that, he brought together all the churches in Ethiopia. And it was not only limited to the churches, but he was also engaging the Muslim community in dialogue because of faith, and that the people of faith in Ethiopia stand together against Marxist ideology. I would say his education was not much. He didn't have the opportunity to go for higher education. He was in high school. Before he reached high school, he became a pastor. He had a pastoral training. But before attending high school, he was able to attend the university at Luther Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's a long story. I can't tell all the story right now, but there he studied theology, and this was during the civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King. So he was there for 3 years, and he had Bachelor's of Divinity. So he wished to go and attend, do his master's and PhD, but he was unable to do so. So he remained with the bachelor's degree, but his work shows that he was very academically gifted. He was a great orator. Of course, he was a preacher, but he was able to develop ideas. As I mentioned earlier, the African theology is one of them. But not only that, his name has become synonymous with holistic theology. Also, he addressed, like on the Lutheran World Federation, he was known to have addressed the human rights issue in 1972. And in Ethiopia, he's among the first to address the issue of land reform to the imperial parliament. This also took place in 1972.
That was really interesting. So with that legacy of his work, it has been established a foundation in 1992. So can you tell us what really inspires for the establishment of the foundation?
How the foundation is established is that 13 years after his abduction and murder, we found out that he was killed. All along for the 13 years, the family and friends were thinking that he would be in one of the prisons because he was put in prison twice and released, and the third time he was abducted and murdered, but we were not aware until the downfall of the Derg. So when we found out, we were in exile abroad. So we, meaning our family, we returned back to Ethiopia for a reburial ceremony, and all his friends, partner, churches from all over the world gathered together, and after the burial ceremony, then we discussed what do we do with his vision. Gudina Tumsa Foundation was not established for his memory, but to carry on his vision. Because he was a man of vision, he addressed issues in his time, and we felt, not only the family, but his friends and colleagues felt that the vision should be carried on. The vision is not only for the church, but also for the country, and even for African churches and peoples, and also on the global level. Even he was speaking about the universal church. So we thought maybe this should be perpetuated through the foundation, and that's why GTF was established.
And similarly, there has been visions and missions of the foundation. So what can you tell us about the vision and mission of the foundation?
Out of the 30 years, for 22 years, we worked among Karayu pastoralists, 200 kilometers from Addis Ababa, on Asab Road, and the upper Awash Valley. That area, even though proximity-wise it's close, only 200 kilometers, it's a very neglected area, very neglected people, very much marginalized. So we went there. This was in 1994. And we started work, and we started out with the school, building a school. There wasn't a single Karayu educated then, or let me say literate. So we started with a primary school and also adult education for the adults. And what started with one school then became an integrated project, including afforestation. It's a very dry area, water development, women empowerment, trading, microfinance, animal health, human health. So it continued. Throughout the 2 decades we worked, and it expanded to many other areas. So that's one area where GTF was operational for many years, but from there we went to other areas, for instance Lagat Afo and Sululta, and beyond that to many other areas. Right now we're operational in Sululta again. We went back there, and we're working on hygiene and sanitation, working on cleaning Sululta town and waste management. Besides that, we're also active in Bishoftu, where we have a center for abandoned babies and women who are victims of violence. We also do a school feeding program in Bishoftu, in Millennium Primary School, where about 460 children are fed twice a day, breakfast and lunch.
There are several things I hope that you are going to share us, but from all the very important points, what are some of the activities that the foundation is carrying out?
We went to, it's called Oromia Relief and Rehabilitation Commission. And we went there and we asked them to recommend an area where we should go, and we expressed our values and our aim. And the man who was the commissioner at the time, by the name of Hussein Ambo, he suggested that we go to the Karayu people. He told us they are very much neglected and marginalized, and we should go there. And of course, we didn't have fund at the time, but with whatever we had in our hand, we went there, we met the people, and we saw the great need that there was in that area. And we liked the people, even though things were very different than what we were used to. So we went there and started working, and as we worked, we saw there was more and more need, and so we stayed there for 22 years.
In your foundation, you have different approach by which you utilize to empower people who are disadvantaged in many sectors. And then can you briefly telling us how you are actually utilizing these empowerment for the betterment of the people under your foundation?
Challenges were many. The environment in itself was a challenge, a very dry area. The people are pushed to the foot of the mountain. They were denied access to the Awash River, where they used to water their animals. And it hardly rains there. So that was a challenge in itself, the natural challenge. On the other hand, there were challenges, cultural challenges, resistance to development, to education. But more than all that, there was a challenge from the side of the government. The government that was in power at the time was very much against the work that we were doing because of suspicion, that they thought maybe there is a hidden agenda that we were carrying, and so they interfered all the time. Sometimes they stopped our projects, sometimes they wouldn't endorse our agreements, project proposals. So that was very difficult challenge in that regard. But even though there were many more challenges, we were not discouraged by that. We continued to work. The exhibition that we're about to launch in regards to the 30th anniversary of GTF's establishment will showcase all the work that was done in regards to education, and the number of students that were educated through the school that GTF built there. And those students who were formerly cattle herders or they kept sheep and goat, today they are doctors, engineers, educators, health workers. So I can say the impact is tremendous. And the reason why we chose to build the school is we believe it's only through education that change can be achieved. People need to be educated in many different forms. And in our experience, we have seen that to be true.
You've mentioned some of the very success idea that you have been undertaking in Karayu, especially. You've seen that area being affected and not getting access. And then, first of all, you focus on providing education, primary education, and then why that area has been selected, and then how is the success, and is there any challenges that you encountered?
The fact that the people are pastoralist was a big challenge in itself, meaning that they migrated from one area to another seasonally in search of grazing land and water. So what they did is they took the children away. One season they were in school, another season they were away migrating with their parents. So in order to solve that problem, we built boarding schools. And when the parents migrated, they stayed there. And the Karayu were not willing to send girls to school. And when we started school, there were 44 boys and one girl. Her name is Alia. And she stayed the only girl in school for a few years. But then we did a home-to-home campaign to raise awareness and to make the Karayu people send their girls. Maybe 10 years after that, there were like, the ratio was 60-40, so 40% girls. And in that regard, the campaign was very successful, and girls were attending school, and they're very successful. Some of them are lawyers, working in government offices, and others engineers working in construction companies. They performed very well, yeah.
The fact that these people don't have any exposure, didn't they find everything unfamiliar? Because one thing, you've provided education, and the second thing, they were also taught in English language. Wasn't it difficult when they were taught in this kind of languages? And what was some of the problems you faced?
To be honest and to speak the truth, as I say, that we were facing a lot of opposition. But now there are a number of undertakings there. We left Karayu in 2017, so we haven't been back ever since. So I can't speak because I haven't seen, but I read on the media like many other people. What is promising is that there are many educated Karayu, and there is the students whom GTF sent to school have established an NGO on their own. It's called Labata Fantale. So they're working for their people. So the effort that we started still continues through Karayu students. So we're very happy and grateful for that.
And how sustainable is the activities you are undertaking, especially when it comes to the pastoral life? You have tried your level-based in educating the people, providing sufficient services for, and now we see the change happening. But how is it like?
We started with one school, one formal school, but a few it's called adult basic education, non-formal education. We had those in different villages, but the school was one. And then later, when the children reached high school, we built a high school in Matahara town, a very nice high school. It was almost like a park, a garden, very nice, with like many hundreds of trees in there and flowering plants. It was very nice. And unfortunately, it was flooded later. It was flooded and destroyed, but it was a very good school. We now that we have left there are many more government schools, public schools. So we're very happy about that, because we started with one school, and when we started there was nothing, but now there are almost in every other village there are schools. GTF was a pioneer in that area. Yeah, and the schools had the quality of education was maintained through programs such as English language boot camp, where we brought in Canadian volunteers every year, and the Karayu children were taught English during the summer. So that helped their success.
Of all the activities you've mentioned, also education as a factor, and also school feeding program. And the school feeding program, wasn't it difficult? Especially also you have been talking about some of the success story you of course did in Bishoftu town. And school feeding isn't actually only difficult thing, but it requires lots of energy, resources. And how were you possible to achieve that goal? And how is the success like this time as we speak?
We were always interested in working with women empowerment, and the feeding program that we're doing has a component where the mothers are economically empowered. They are given a small amount of loan to do petty trading. That's one thing that we're doing in that area. And also Bishoftu has become an industrial town, and more workers, usually young women, coming to Bishoftu to work in the industries, and they're very young, maybe 10th grade and below that. They come there to work, and then there are no parents to supervise them, and they end up getting pregnant and having babies, and what they do is they abandon the babies, and some of them we find on the streets, and some of them in the woods, and we take them and put them up in the center, and whenever we find adoptive parents, then we make arrangements with the local government bureau there, and so this is helping the most marginalized, and we are very happy to do that. In addition to that, we're doing youth employment in Lagatafo area, and that includes garment making and pottery, bamboo works, and basket weaving. That also empowers the youth to become economically independent. These are some of the things that we're doing.
Are there any government sectors or NGOs who are supporting you, collaborating with you to achieve your dream come true?
We are supported by ELNET Foundation. It's a foundation, and we work together. They provide financial support for the project, and that's how we have been able to do it. Now that the government is doing school feeding in all schools in Ethiopia, we approached the government, the local government, asking to take over the project, but they expressed to us that they're overwhelmed because they are doing it in very many schools, and for GTF to continue the feeding program. So we continued. Some of the things that we're doing is we have a vegetable garden in there, which really helps feed the children, in addition to the food that is being purchased. But as you said, it's not an easy undertaking, but we're seeing a tremendous amount of change in the lives of the children and on how they perform in school. We measure the progress from time to time, and the health-wise and physically and also academically, the children are performing very well. And we're also doing what I mentioned earlier, an English boot camp. And the Karayu students who were in that program in Fantale have now graduated from the university, but they go and help the children in Bishoftu, in that school, teaching English. GTF is blessed with a very committed staff. So we have staff members who work in different areas of our projects, for instance, in the school feeding program. If you want to go visit one day, you can go visit. It's very, very clean and very healthy nutritional food that is being provided for the children. So we have a good staff, cooks, cleaners, but also project heads who are running the project. And the English boot camp, it takes place during the break, when the children have like summer break. That's when it takes place. And our former Karayu students who attended the program go there, stay there in Bishoftu with the children, and it's like a crash course. It takes place for 6 weeks, but within 6 weeks they enable the children on how to communicate in English. So it's a very effective program.
Sustainability is a very critical thing whenever we are engaged in charity work, it's like what you are doing. So to keep the legacy of what are some of the stabilities in maintaining the success of these particular group of people?
When we started, we were discouraged by all parties, the people, the community, the government bureau at the time, saying that it's a very dry area and the soil is sandy, and even if the seedlings grow, the worms are going to eat them up, and also the water salinity is very high, so you will not be able to do so. But we insisted on doing it, and what we did was we brought into Fantale from Gambella region drought-resistant trees, neem tree. On the first trip, we were able to transport 10,000 seedlings from Gambella all the way to Fantale, and we planted all of them, and we succeeded in that. And after that, we started our own nursery and continued planting, and we at first it was GTF staff doing it, but then later on we involved the community, and they started planting trees around their homesteads. Since they are pastoralists, they like open field to be able to graze their animals. But when at first it was drought-resistant trees, but then we started what we call multi-purpose trees. Trees that could be used for shade, but also to feed their animals. Then they were interested. Trees like moringa tree, which is good for medicinal purpose, but at the same time, it served very well for the animals as animal feed, and also for people to eat as green leaf. So it was. That's one type of tree that I mentioned, but there were several types of trees that they were interested in, and the people participated, and it went very well.
There is what we call a collaborative effort in celebrating the future potential of the people in this organization. Can you briefly tell us the crux of the matter?
The first one I mentioned to you earlier is educating them on different levels in many different ways. And the second one is economic empowerment. So when we went to Fantale first, there wasn't any form of business. There wasn't any form of trading among the Karayu. So we started with a shop, and that shop was owned by 25 women who were organized into a cooperative. And the women were receiving. This was an economic empowerment, selling, buying, and selling. But at the same time, they were given what is called a functional literacy program to enable them to read and write and simple arithmetic. And that one shop became very successful. Maybe you can look at pictures and videos of them. But then that shop was being replicated in other villages in Fantale district. So at the end, there were about 18 shops owned by basically women. And then grinding mill stores also were being built in different villages and owned by the people. The women used to travel up to 20 kilometers to find a grinding mill in Matahara town. But then, when the grinding mill warehouse was built, they could do it in their own village. So empowering the people, the first thing is education is a very important component. When I say education, it's not only sending people to school, but using also non-formal education and using the knowledge of the people because they're very knowledgeable in their own area. They're knowledgeable about their history, about their culture, about keeping animals, many more. You can learn a lot from them. And we also work on how to preserve their own indigenous knowledge.
What is the objective in relationship with how we can potentially utilize the future potential of these individuals?
Let me just give you one example. The Karayu keep animals, and they know how to treat their animals in case of sickness. But then, modern medicine, animal veterinary medicine was also needed. And GTF built 2 veterinary clinics at the beginning. And what we did was we trained the Karayu herdsmen, not only men, but also women, on how to, the basic of veterinary medicine, the basics of it. When vaccination was needed, they did it themselves when there were common animal disease, and they could treat them on their own. So before launching the project, a study was done on the knowledge of the Karayu people, the kind of treatments, traditional treatments they gave to their animals. So it was a combination of modern and indigenous that we did.
We know also you are going to celebrate the 13 years anniversary, and then you're hoping, of course, you're going to hold a kind of exhibition at Friendship Square in the capital, Addis Ababa. What is it all about, and how essential it is, and who are the target audience, and what do people benefit out of this actually showcase?
Anniversary celebration is to reflect on what we did on the past 3 decades since GTF's establishment. But it's not only to reflect on that, but it's also to engage the younger generation on philanthropic type of service. In our time, young people are more interested in entrepreneurial undertakings than they are on philanthropic. So we would like them to come and see, be inspired by what they see. We're already engaging many young people through an organization called Road Track. It's connected with maybe you know about them. So maybe 100 of them have engaged in this celebration activity. They're helping prepare for the anniversary, and they're going to be there on the event and receive guests, do presentations. So what we would like to do is encourage the culture of volunteerism among the youth of our country. Having such an exhibition will encourage them to consider that sector of the society, and to be involved, to start thinking, how can I benefit my community? What can I give up to my community, than always thinking only for oneself. I would say the majority of the people haven't heard about him. And the people who have heard about him are maybe around theological circles, academicians, scholars may know about him, or politicians may know about him. But many young people hardly know, because maybe one of our weakest point is publicizing. We haven't been very good with that. So, young people don't know about him, but those who know are very much interested, or those who hear about him are very much interested, and they are always surprised. And was there such a person? Was there a man who was thinking along that line? Many of his thinkings it could be on the relation of the West with Africa, for instance. If you read in his writing, is very fascinating. It was very bold and very courageous, not afraid of the government, not afraid of the West, even though the Western countries who worked with his church in partnership were the donors. He was not afraid to engage in critical dialogue with them, even to criticize their way of doing development, and to suggest which development approach is the best development approach for Ethiopian society. You read in his writing that he refuses to be dictated, and he says, we in Africa know what is best for us. We don't want to be dictated by any European mission agencies or organizations. So he was that kind of a man, and it inspires young people to know that. But as I said earlier, many don't know about him, and this event that we're organizing, the anniversary event at Friendship Park, will show people the kind of person he was, and the work that the foundation that was established in his memory is doing. This also is based on Gudina Tumsas writing on contextualization. So it's interpreting things into the context of the people, interpreting ideas into the context or the culture of the people. So because of that, GTF focuses a lot on the culture of the community we work with. So what kind of culture do they have, and what kind of knowledge and know-how do they bring to the project? So we have been working on that, and one of GTF's projects in Addis, which was started in 1993, was for firewood collectors around Addis, and for women. And they were trained in making beads and cultural clothing, and they could sell and make a living out of that. It started with that one and continued, and yeah, if you come to the culture show, you will see many artifacts and cultural clothing, modernized, some of them, but inspired by the culture of the local people.
Gudina Tumsa Foundation, the kind of conversation that I had with you was really amazing and inspirational. I'm really, really happy, and thank you for your priceless time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Binyam. It was very nice to meet you, and thank you for having me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings up our today's ETV English special program, a kind of exclusive interviews that we had with CEO of Gudina Tumsa Foundation, that is Lensa Gudina, and hopefully the stories and challenge and success stories that have been going on under the foundation has inspired you. Thank you so much for the time that you have had. Until I see you in another edition of ETV English Language, goodbye from me now. I'm your host, Binyam.